We're live. I'm hoping that we're live. So we're coming on from a different platform tonight so that we can go live, hopefully on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So if there is anybody there, could you let us know that we are live or that you can see us on whatever platform? I don't see anybody in at the moment, but hopefully there will be. Um, we're going to wait here for maybe 5 minutes, and if we see that there's nobody on, we'll go directly into Instagram Live. So these are the trials. This is another first for us. So we're
Yeah.
trying things out. Yeah. So I really want to welcome Linn tonight. So Linn is part of our team. She's a nutritional therapist. So not a psychotherapist, a nutritional therapist, which I think is a vital part to our overall health. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about what has gone on, maybe for Linn to bring her to where she is today, and get you to know her a little bit better. Because I suppose as we go forward, we've spoken before that we are going to be running support groups for people with eating disorders, and Linn will be part of that support within that. So if anybody is here, can you please say hi to let us know? It would be great. And if not, we'll keep going until 5 past, Linn, and see
Okay.
if there's nobody here. We go. So it's saying that we are live. So
Yeah.
that's all we can do. I'm just going to go into Instagram just to see, and I see ourselves, even though I don't know whether that will put me out or not. But
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't see it live on Instagram here.
Isn't.
So yeah. So that's not great. So there is one person. So maybe you could just tell us where you're watching us from. From what platform? Is it Instagram? Is it Facebook, LinkedIn? That would be great, just to let us know, because we're not sure. Are there people watching this, or do so? There's two people, so maybe it just took a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So if it's okay, just to let us know. So maybe as well there could be maybe a delay. So I think we'll keep going,
Okay.
then, because it feels like maybe there's a delay in people having came on, but that they'll be able to watch it as we're speaking.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me,
Oh,
okay, Facebook, I'm Anya. Oh, lovely. Thank you, Anya, for letting us know. So that's great. We're not sure whether we're on Instagram or LinkedIn. So if anybody is there that could jump on there and see, can they see us live? And maybe how we look on the screen as well would be important, Anya. Great to have you there to help us out. Um,
yeah.
okay, so Linn,
Yeah.
maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself then.
Yeah. Thanks, Mary, and thanks for having me and for having me on the team. So, my name is Lynn. I live in the west of Ireland. I have lived in Ireland for over 20 years now, but I grew up in Sweden. I suppose, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I need to mention that. Sometimes I prefer not to mention that.
Yes.
Sometimes people comment on my accent, but part of, I suppose, nutrition therapy and the work that I do now, I call it like nutrition counseling, because a lot of the work that I do is really centering around people's relationship with food, eating, and their bodies. Um, was like, it's my second career, and it was something that I suppose came into through my own lived experience. Like, I spent from, I'd say, the age of 16 to the age of maybe 26, going on and off diets and yo-yoing in weight and food intake and all kinds of stuff. And then when I was in my mid-20s and I needed to change my career, I was like, maybe I should go into nutrition, because I've spent a lot of time thinking about this stuff and
Yes.
burying my head in all sorts of diet books and things for a long time. So I thought maybe I should just make my career. So that's really kind of how it came about. And as I finished my nutrition therapy training, and I started working with people, I really found that it wasn't quite as straightforward as to just support people in changing their diet or telling people that they could eat more of this and maybe less of that. What I found was there was, not for everybody, but for a lot of people, there was a lot of emotional attachment to food and the relationship with food. And then I suppose, I remember one client in particular that was like, okay, I need to go back to look more about the emotional eating and what is the kind of psychology around this stuff. And it was really funny because at the time, I wasn't really thinking so much about my own lived experience, actually, because I was a good bit into my own recovery process at that time, and my own relationship with food was quite stable, or like I suppose relatively stable anyway. And so I wasn't really thinking about that. And then I kind of started doing a bit more training. And then I had another client some years after that. That was the last client I ever put in a weighing scale. And she was uncomfortable and I was uncomfortable. And I was thinking, why are we doing this? Because I don't do this to myself, because I know that this isn't good for my relationship with food. So I'm not doing that. And then I stopped that. And then from there, it really evolved into coming at our relationship with food and nutrition from a place of care rather than restriction and fear. So that's very much how I operate. And then through my professional training, it's almost, I think about my journey, my personal and professional journey with food and eating as a kind of as a full circle, because then as I was training more, I had some real big aha moments from my own eating journey and my own binge eating particularly, where I realized like, oh, right, it was because I was dieting and restricting that I was binging, and it was because my blood sugar was all over the place, and it was because my job was so miserable and I was really unhappy. And it was like, because I had distance to it at the time, I could see that, oh, right, now it became really clear why things had evolved the way they did, and how I eventually got myself out of that pickle as well. And I didn't have professional help on my own recovery journey. I do believe that, I suppose, because a lot of people, particularly with binge eating, like there's a lot of shame attached to it. And B, it's often very much tangled up with dieting as well. So it feels like a me problem versus a me and a cultural influence problem. And then and I didn't know where to go. Like, who do you go to? Do you go to a therapist? Do you go to a dietitian? Do you go to a nutritionist? And this was, and also at the time, I suppose at the height of my own journeys, which would have been around 2006-7, like binge eating disorder wasn't even a criteria on its own in the DSM. So that would also put that into perspective. So even if I think I did reach out to a dietitian, but then it was too expensive, so I couldn't afford it at the time. And I remember saying to my friend, I was like, Jesus, I'm feeling out of control. I think I should go to therapy. She unfortunately had a bad therapy experience. She's like, I wouldn't bother with that either. So I was like, okay. So what I did do was like, I changed my job and moved to the other side of the world. And that kind of got me on enough of a trajectory.
But just hear that, Lynn, I changed my job and I moved, but because I suppose, with stress and work, and that connection that, the mental with then the physical, the binging, eating, and how, and I really have, I really want, I suppose it's that education to people that it's all interconnected.
Yeah, it is. It really is, I think. And I think about eating disorders as a biopsychosocial disorders, like that there's many components, because particularly when we work with, like, we think about, say, we know that anorexia, for example, anorexia nervosa is like it's a restrictive eating disorder. But I think a lot of people don't think about binge eating as also a restrictive eating disorder, right? Because there's a strong restrictive component. And I definitely didn't think about it like that from my own personal lived experience when I was in the midst of it. And I think even in my early training days moving towards this field, I didn't think about it like that either, because it's like we have to fix this out of control eating behavior. But when we look at that there is a restrictive part, and the physiology that restriction part also plays a role in driving the cycle, right? Because food abstinence isn't really, compatible for survival. Like,
yeah. So
nobody.
would you talk a little bit more, Lynn, around the restrictive part in the binge eating?
Yeah, so like often the restrictive is, I mean, we can restrict calories, we can restrict food groups, we can restrict, total food intake, but also even sometimes when people have let go of that because they can't, keep that going, there's often mental restriction then. There's a lot of, I shouldn't have that, or I can have like one cookie or two cookies. And then if you have three, now, well, broke the diet or broke whatever rules I had. So I might as well continue on with the rest of the package, right? Because tomorrow I'm not going to have any. And then and what I find, and I see this more and more, I think maybe because I started looking at it, also when there's been a lived experience at childhood when food has been restricted, whether that was because of a parent, a well-meaning parent who was worried about their child's weight, whether that was because of food poverty or food insecurity, and also then when there's been a long history of like binge restrict or like going from one diet to another diet and stuff, it's like the body holds this memory of food insecurity. And the only way I believe out of that is regular adequate eating, because the body has to feel safe. It has to be safe to stop eating. And in order for it to be safe, and in order for it to be safe to stop eating, you need to know that there's another meal coming when you need it. Right.
And there's something there, Lynn, as well. And I would talk about that a lot. For the body, again, to trust you, so if it's a thing that I have my breakfast in the morning and I don't eat another thing until maybe 8 o'clock that night, the body is actually looking. Well, this is my thinking, and you're the nutritionist, so you'll tell me. But the body, I feel, will either hold on to that food because it doesn't know when it's going to get the next food, or it's going to let it go straight away, as opposed to if it knows. And again, this is routine, and our body needs routine in order to feel safe. So if I have breakfast at a certain time, if I have lunch at a certain time, and again, just have a little flexibility around that, but that it's in or around the same time, the digestive tract and everything sort of knows what's happening because it's regular. But when it becomes irregular, that's when we can get into bother, and that's when our body starts shouting at us as well in other ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I mean, for people who are restricting, or even binge restricting or binging and purging, then like, that can definitely mess with your digestive system as well, because of the unpredictability. And if there's no food coming for a long time, sure, there's not much to do. So it's like, we can chill out here because, we don't have anything to work with. And then maybe there's a lot of food coming all at once. Or obviously when people are purging, the lower digestive tract doesn't get to do the job it's supposed to be doing because the food isn't moving through. Yes. And that is another thing as well. I think when people are purging, that can drive the binges as well, because the body still isn't getting enough food. Yes. So from the physiological perspective, the body feels like it's a state of famine or like starvation. And it can be low level, but that's enough to create the sense of anxiety as well. And I often hear with people when they start eating more and they're eating regular, it's like, I feel much calmer. I feel, I sleep better. My headaches are gone. But I just feel calmer. Yeah, of course, because like, I don't know about you, but when I'm like hungry, I feel more anxious and irritable and stuff. And
there's the word hangry. So that word, like it isn't there just to say it. It is that. And you know it with a baby. The baby is they're screaming until they get that bottle.
Yeah.
And it is that sort of nearly the body goes into not panic, but on a level which maybe create an anxiety, or as you said, that we become irritable.
Yeah, absolutely. And when that has been a lived experience as a young person, like as a child, like that's like, I often ask people, what was your relationship with food in your family? Like, and was there any, like food restriction, or and people will tell you that, yeah, food was chaotic, or one parent was drinking most of the money, so we never know. There could be food for a few days, and then it could be scarce, or the cupboards were always locked, or we didn't get these things. And then when you get your own money, you go off and spend it because now you can, right? So there is that, and that's, for me, like when I think particularly about binge eating, it's like I think about it as a two-prong. There is the deprivation-driven eating, which is that sort of physiological one, and then there is the emotional eating, like when it's coping. And if you don't tackle the two, if you only go after the emotional part, like that we are using food for coping, you can only get so far if the person is still sort of restricting, like whether they are still trying to lose weight, or they're still trying to follow a particular diet and cutting out certain things, and that's creating its own internal kind of challenges. So I believe we really have to make sure that the body's adequately nourished as well, and that means for me that eating is always an option, even if it is emotional. It's never white knuckled. Because again, if there's been, which again, even if somebody's been dieting on and off for 20 years, that's also food insecurity from the body's perspective, and you cannot heal that sense of deprivation if the food isn't always an option. And again, if people are currently living in food insecure homes, this is going to be really challenging then. So it's going to be just difficult to heal, and we can do the best we can if that's the circumstance, right?
Yeah. And something about the wisdom of the body. So if I am restricting, say, a certain food group, the body, and again, I don't know, but it would be my thinking that the body then starts craving for these, whatever it is that's needed, that there's a deficiency in something in me. And I suppose we see it, what's coming up for me is in pregnancy, where you hear that they will eat maybe coal or whatever it is that actually the body, the wise body is craving because there's a deficiency. And I wonder, is it something similar when we sort of leave out a certain food group, say carbohydrates, for example,
Yeah, sugar.
What happens in the body?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, I hear sometimes vegetarians or vegans say, no, I'm craving meat. And then, if you go and get your bloods checked, it turns out they're low in B12 or iron or both, right? But I think I can speak from my personal experience.
Yes.
Like, if I'm telling myself that I can't have certain things, I want them more. And I think that's a mental game. And what happens for me is like the inner rebel comes out. So even though this is a self-imposed restriction, and I'm kind of going, no, you shouldn't be having that, I go, well, who are you to tell me? And then it just goes to like, I'm just going to eat this now because somebody said that I can't have it, whether I want it or not. So, yeah. And it worked like that for years.
Yeah, that fits so much to my brats on the bus. I talk a lot about brats on the bus. And within us all, that we have all of these brats. And there's the brat that wants to be good and wants to be slim and ideal and all of this sort of ideal, whatever ideal is. And then there's the other one that says, oh, no way, you deserve, so there's the one that wants to spoil you. And then there's the one that is just full on wanting to cause a bit of chaos within yourself. And so that the adult is always supposed to be driving the bus, but sometimes we let that one up to the front, and next thing she's gone through the packet of biscuits because she took the wheel, and she's gone off with on that run of the binge, so to speak. Where actually, if I can come back and just check in with myself, because it is, usually, and again, I'm not sure, usually what if we go back to before I start at the biscuits, there might be something that has niggled, whether it's an anxiety about something, whether it is something that we've seen that, so has triggered something for us, that actually puts us
over trying to be quote unquote good. So we're thinking all the time, I'm not going to eat any of those.
Yes.
So now they're just getting really, really loud in the cupboard. Yes. And then you go, I'm going to have one, which would taste good. So you'd have two. And then you're going to go, actually, and maybe you're a bit hungry as well because you didn't eat that much to lunch because you were trying to, save up or limit calories or whatever. And then it's like, oh, and now your body goes, oh, food is coming. That's exciting. And then all of a sudden you're eating 3 and maybe 4. And then what happens is like, I saw somebody, she called it like a meta binge. So now the next one is like, right, I shouldn't have done that. And then affect it because I'm telling myself I'm not going to have any biscuits tomorrow. So I'm going to get them out of the house. And the way I'm going to get them out of the house is either I'm going to eat them all till I feel sick, or I'm going to bin them, or I'm going to throw all of that. Yeah. So there is that kind of sense of, and sometimes, of course, you go to the packet of biscuits and you eat them all before you even realize, because maybe you needed to numb out for whatever reason, or ground yourself, or just transition. But sometimes there is this, I'm telling myself, I shouldn't, there for this occasion, there for Friday, there for the guests, whatever. And then it's because I told myself I shouldn't. And when I break that, that's what kind of tips me over the edge.
And something, Lynn, that you said there, and I think it's very true, that I suppose what I'm picking up is that the binge eating, the anorexia, that's a symptom. It's sort of the piece on the top, but we're all different, and we do things. Everything that we do is all for a different reason, and that's, I suppose, why we need that sort of support to unpack what actually is going on, and each of us being individual, what we're unpacking is very different to another person. So if you were to just say maybe a little bit about how you would maybe approach a first appointment with somebody.
Yeah. So I suppose because I'm a nutritionist, I'm always really interested in what people are eating. So of course that is a difference maybe to a therapist. I would ask like, okay, what is your food intake? But just general, and always with no kind of judgment, because we're here to be curious. And I'm also recognized that sometimes that's a very hard place to start. But, often I usually ask people about what's been your history with dieting? Like, what's been your, like, how was your relationship with food? What was it like in your family? Mm-hmm. And what's been your relationship with eating and diets, like through your lifespan to here? And sometimes that question can take most of the session. Mm. That can be. And then typically from there, I might ask people to do a kind of a diet recall, because I just want to get a sense of, at this point, I'm not that interested in actually kind of what people are eating, but more like how is the pattern throughout the day? Is there gaps? Do they eat breakfast? Do they skip lunch? Do they skip breakfast? If they're binging, when is it happening? Because that will tell, like, most people tend to binge in the later part of the day, like from lunchtime onwards. But, then we could sort of, because I'm looking at the food stuff. So then if somebody says, I'm binging between like leaving work and coming home. So then we might look at, what are you eating for lunch, for example? If I get a sense, doesn't look like there's a lot of food going in, right? Then we might look at that. And then together I ask, okay, so now we've had this chat, and we're like, what's emerged from that, and what do you want to work on for the next week or 2 weeks until we meet again? Yeah. So it's very, like, anything can come up there. And I think because I come from a nutrition background, the basics of like adequacy and regularity is like, those are the fundamentals. But I don't start with changing particular qualities or taking things out. But as sometimes we're working with somebody, people might find that certain foods that they have been eating, maybe they don't like them actually, because they were only eating them because they were low calorie or low fat, or they were told themselves, this is what I can have. But also sometimes you'd find that people find like, actually, when I'm eating these foods, they don't suit my body. I get digestive upsets, or it gives me a headache or whatever. And then that might be a kind thing to start steering away from some of those and bringing other things in. And that's very different to reduce foods because they have a negative impact. And I'm not talking about weight here, because that's a very different thing. But like from, you know, energy, usually digestive health, or like headaches or sleep or something like that. If, you know, your body is saying, hey, I can only tolerate this much of this food. And then you have to choose kind of carefully, and you might be bringing in more of other things, and maybe you start bringing in things that you didn't allow yourself to eat for years even. But they're enjoyable, and they give pleasure to your life. So we're bringing in some of that in, because I believe that food should be enjoyable and a pleasurable part of one's life, but it shouldn't be our whole life that we think about, which it tends to be when you're in that space. You know, that's like, it's very all-consuming, I think.
Yeah, and I think having somewhere safe where you can really discuss your eating habits, what you're eating, that actually in the talking it out, you yourself get a clearer picture of actually, and you can see the different patterns that are there, and how then that you may find ways yourself to change that pattern, and to then maybe look at what might be the root of under that is maybe causing it for you.
Yeah, because what's really interesting as well, and as we're exploring that, and I do spend a lot of time actually talking with people, or people talking about what they're eating, and I had this, and then I noticed that, and I was thinking, you know, and maybe not everybody talks as much. We don't always talk about food in sessions too, but there is a lot of those conversations. And people can sometimes say, oh, I notice I'm craving this very specific things. Like I was stressed, and then it's like this thing. Or when I'm kind of binging, it's like, I remember a client just said, I was binging childhood cereals. And I just thought it was so interesting. I said, what's childhood cereals? And she said, oh, you know, like Cocoa Pops or whatever, something along those lines. And I was just like, but like the way she used the word childhood cereals. And then it was like, oh, right. Those were the foods that were available when she was a kid and their parents were fighting and things were chaotic. But what had happened then, because these were like high sugar, processed, whatever, they were out of the diet when she was trying to lose weight. So there was like a double whammy. But what happened when she could bring those back in and allow those to be a source of comfort as well, there was so much freedom around that.
Huge, isn't that huge?
Yeah, it is so big.
Yeah, and again, it is in the slowing down to pick up, to really hone in on the childhood cereals, and that's the end. I know as part of our training, Lynn, we would have been educated very much on, you know, with depression around all the processed foods, and how there is a direct link with processed food and depression, like the cereals that you're talking about, the packets of soup, all of anything that's processed. For some people can be, it's like, if I can eliminate them out of my diet, that actually my mood will lift, you know. So that would have been part. So it was, I suppose, brought in, and again that part of balance. Ourselves balanced, because we can go off kilter when we miss a meal, and even our bodies. I know for me, if I haven't ate right today, tomorrow I would have a migraine, you know. So my head really lets me know to have the balance of food, and how important it is for me. And if I don't, that actually my body will let me know tomorrow that actually I didn't look after it enough.
Yeah. And I think it's you're right, it's such a fine balance, and it's really to figure out what works. And it's somebody recently who is more on the ARFID spectrum, so very limited diet, and who came and had done some work with a therapist before to diffuse the tension between the young person and the parent and the pressure of trying to get the child to eat. Like, this is an older teen, but there was a lot of stress on the dinner table because of, pressure. And so that's what has resolved before they came to me. But even as they're just trying some new things, usually fruit and vegetables that are, different tastes and different textures can be really challenging. But we were bringing in some very basic supplements that are fruit-based. And I think I've seen them for maybe about a month or so. And they noticed themselves like that they're kind of like, the energy is a bit better and the mood is a bit better. And I also think that they're getting more confidence because they feel like they can try things. And, I said, you can spit it out if it's not doable. But like, there was so much fear around choking, or like, if I don't like it. And there was a lot of internalized pressure as well. But so like, even sometimes, because when the diet is very limited like that, of course, it's going to be nutrients, like a higher risk for nutrition deficiencies then. So like, I think that's when supplements can be really helpful. But because of this challenge with, oral intake, I was like, okay, what are we going to do? Like, we can't have something that's, like something that's liquids, that's too strong of a taste. That's not going to go down. Or if it's tablets, like, no, it's like, no, I don't want tablets. So these are fruit gummies that are made of like pure fruit extracts and stuff. They were going down fine. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, and again, it's that, isn't fear plays a big part
Huge.
too,
Yeah.
Huge. Fear plays a big
And try to
Okay,
kind of get over that, yeah.
Yeah, so I have, I'm going to read out one of the questions, Lynn, and see, maybe you can answer it. Let me just... Okay. I don't think that we have gone live on Instagram, but we'll post it onto Instagram, which is an awful pity.
Yeah.
You'll have to come back on again to do an Instagram live. But it's definitely on Facebook. I don't know, so I had it on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. I had done the whole lot, so I'll have to get onto this platform, people, tomorrow and see, okay, what have we done wrong?
We can do another Instagram live, Mary, some other day.
Absolutely, we can. So this is one of the questions. I think, because we'll answer this one. For your Ask the Therapist tomorrow, I am wondering how to help my adult son to seriously eat healthier. He is living with us. He's over 500 pounds and is also autistic, high functioning. Yesterday, while cleaning his bathroom, I discovered he had cracked the tub with his weight. I'm concerned for his health. I am someone who does understand food addiction and obesity. I was over 400 pounds myself. Over the last 8 years, I have changed how I eat and cook, very healthily. Sometimes he will eat some of my food, but also orders in unhealthy food. He says that the way I focus on my eating and health is like a cult, and all I or we talk about. I also suggested therapy and he says he's fine. Any advice?
Gosh, that's a big question, and it's a kind of a hard question to ask without having even more context. As this guy is autistic, like, it's not uncommon that food, like, challenges around sensory processing, like, that's quite common. So like limited variety it's quite common because people prefer predictability, and fruit and vegetables are really unpredictable things. You know yourself, you can eat one blueberry, taste one way, and then you take another one and it tastes completely different, and that can be really hard for an autistic person, for the processing of that. So they often like foods that are the same, and if you're eating processed food and packaged food, it's very likely that it's going to taste the same. If I'm picking up in this bar today and I pick it up another one tomorrow, it's going to taste exactly the same, and there's a lot of comfort and safety in that. So that might be part of it. Of
Hmm.
course, for this guy, yeah, he's in a big body, and
Yes.
I'm guessing also there might be a lot of shame around that for about him. There's obviously another dynamic here with his mother. I'm guessing it's the mother that wrote in, who have
Mm.
been in a big body and lost a lot of weight. So has
Mm.
two different experience of what it feels like to live in a larger body and everything that comes with that. And also having lost weight and been able to keep it off, and now has the experience of that. But
Yeah.
there's also, I feel just from how it was worded, there's a lot of tension between one person wanting the other person to do something. And really, I
Yes.
think, and I don't know if you agree with this, Mary, but it's like,
Yeah.
the only person that can change is ourselves. We can only support and facilitate other people along that way, but we really we need to want to make that ourselves. So
Mm.
in this situation, you really, I think, have to also look at the dynamic between the two individuals in this constellation. It's not just
Yeah.
a one person challenge. There's
No.
different things in
No.
here.
And I suppose you know yourself. If somebody sort of wants you to do something, and you don't want to do it, or you're just not there yet, naturally my back goes up, and I sort of become defensive, and I push away,
Yeah.
um, and I then maybe give out and say, well, that's a cult you're in, but it's not. It's it's a defense. I suppose that would be my thinking, that it's a defense, and I suppose my suggestion would be, maybe for her to look at when she was the 400 pounds, and if somebody told her what to do, and I'm not saying she's telling him what to do, she's maybe suggesting, but that she could only do it when she was ready to do it. And I suppose we all have our own road, and this is the piece. And for this guy right now, this is where he's at, and this is what he's. I suppose I'm not sure, is he okay with it, but it
Yeah.
it's where he's at. He's not in a place right now to look at beginning to address, because I suppose with the weight, there comes additional health problems start
Yeah.
to emerge. And more than likely that's a worry for his mother,
Of course.
or father.
Yeah.
So that's natural, and anybody that's a parent sort of knows that, and there's a real
Yeah.
anxiety of wanting to fix and wanting everything to be okay. So it's about, can I come back?
Yeah.
Can I come back and tend to me, and just, I suppose, kindness and compassion and space, I
Yeah.
suppose, would be my three words:
I
kindness, compassion.
I would agree. I think removing maybe food and weight from the conversations for a while might be helpful to take pressure off both
Yeah.
both the son and the parent. I think to
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
eyes on your own plates for a while, I think might just also help
Yeah.
with relationship, because it is really, really difficult. And I think I'd imagine for somebody who's been on that journey themselves, you feel the
Yes.
benefits, but also weight loss is a really tricky one, because it can be very difficult to maintain. Like the research is incredibly scant on successful
Yes.
weight loss outcomes. So how we do that, but that isn't the same thing as we can take good care of our bodies that we have,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah.
um
Yeah. And I totally get the anxiety that the mum has, and it's so understandable.
yeah.
But talking about it when somebody isn't ready, for me, can be like a red rag to a bull. I'll do the opposite. And I know me personally. I tend to be a bit like,
Yeah.
if somebody's telling me what to do, it's like, it triggers something in me that no, 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 no.
It definitely
So,
be like that too. Whether I'm the one telling myself I shouldn't do
yes,
it, or somebody else is
yes,
telling me I shouldn't do
yeah,
it. I'm like, you what?
yeah.
So yeah,
And especially, I suppose probably it comes from childhood, being maybe told what to do. That I'm an adult now, and nobody's going to be telling me what to do.
yeah,
And it's that piece, and this guy is more than likely an adult as well. So there's that piece. It's about
yeah,
respecting his
yeah,
and and whether it's a difficult journey for him, he sees it maybe very different to how she sees it. And I think what you said there about food is really with autism, that familiarity, that actually it's I'm not thrown
That's
by
what I've learned
what you
from
know.
the artistic people that I have had the
Yeah.
pleasure working with, that like the fruit and vegetables are quite difficult because of that they are
Hmm.
unpredictable in their in the taste experience. And I,
Oh, definitely.
and we know that, but my brain can handle that, and it's like
Yes.
it's not a big deal. I was working with one woman, and she was having a really difficult time because sometimes foods were fine, and then all of
Yes.
a sudden her brain could just go, no, no, or something happened with the texture was off, and then all of a sudden that wasn't possible to eat that food again for, it could be months. So it was quite tricky then to trying to make sure that she was eating enough throughout the day so that she wouldn't binge, or like at least she'd had headaches and things like that because she wasn't eating that much. And you then also tried to prevent any nutrition deficiencies from occurring as a result of a limited diet. But that's
Yes.
where I think sometimes when I first started, working, I came out of my training, I was much more like, we have to eat really good quality foods and cook from scratch. And then, you work with people with limited income or limited skills or limited time and other challenges. And we're kind of like, in the end of the day, fed is best, and adequate regular eating, regardless of like, we're talking roughly okay quality, like, that's like, I'm not saying like if you're eating a bar of chocolate for breakfast, lunch and dinner, like that's going to do the job, but
But isn't
food,
it? Yeah.
it's going
Yeah,
to,
but it could be becoming more flexible, like, because we need to be flexible and work with,
yeah,
so we work with what we have,
yeah,
what's in front of us. And as you said, sometimes it can be financially, sometimes it can be texture. There's so many things. And that's why everybody is so individual.
yeah, absolutely,
So
yeah,
I suppose with this week is Eating Disorder Awareness Week, and it's really great, Lynn, that you have came on board with us to chat tonight. And pity, I just don't understand how we haven't gotten on Instagram.
can't get it
But
all to work.
but it will. I hope to be able to save this after and put it on, then
Yeah,
upload it onto Instagram.
yeah,
So we have. Oh, apologies, the TV is after going on.
and I've got
So
a dog
we have
that's barking. So
you have a dog
just-
barking. Isn't this the joys of online? I don't know what happened to TV. But we have a quick question before we finish, and it is: can someone get diagnosed with autism years after borderline personality disorder diagnosis? And I would say that's more of maybe a medical question, but I can't see why not. If the test hasn't been done or the test hasn't been done, absolutely, that you can. Okay.
yeah,
Okay, Lynn.
great.
So on that note, I really want to thank you for tonight. And we will get this up onto Instagram, and we will have you back, and hopefully I will have this sorted, because I think the only one we went on to tonight was Facebook.
Okay,
But that's okay.
well, that's
That's okay.
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 Thank
So
you.
thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you next Tuesday night. Ask the Therapist at 8 p.m. on Tuesday. And please share and like our post. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary.